Jason says, if you were to start over making connections and forging relationships with other bloggers, podcasters, and YouTubers, how would you go about doing so? So when it comes to building relationships, Jason, the number one thing that makes it so easy is to get an introduction from somebody else. So if you happen to know anybody, and again, if you're just starting from scratch, you're going to have to dig in a little bit to see who might you know, and maybe you won't know anybody, and these further tips will help you. But if you can at all start with relationships that you already have with people that exist, then that's easier than reaching out to somebody cold. That's number one. Number two, it's really important to understand what you have as in terms of a superpower. What might be, even if you didn't have connections, what would a person say to make a connection to somebody else? That's what you need to know for yourself. What is your superpower, so that you can come in and not be sort of a competitor, but you can be complementary. So the story I want to tell about this really quick is I interviewed this woman. She was a dog trainer, and she was a dog trainer in her local area, but she wanted to go online and she wanted to make these connections. She wanted to start a podcast, but she was worried that she wasn't going to start something that was worth listening to because everybody else already had a show about dog training, and she was not quite sure how she would compete or how she would even get on a person's radar. So we worked in this interview to determine what her superpower was. And her superpower, we determined, was her just capability and ability to help people who have very violent dogs, so very vicious dogs, like they're going to bite your hand off if you pet them type of dogs. And so we hone in on that, and she's like, yeah, that's not what that's not like on my website, but that's kind of what I'm good at. So we determined that, whoa, okay, that's it. That's your superpower. So now she was able to imagine going to a person who had this already established blog or podcast about dog training and coming in and offering something of value to them. Hey, my name's Amy, and I help people train very vicious dogs. I see that you have this amazing dog training audience, but you don't have any episodes about teaching very violent dogs, and there could be a percentage of people in your audience who could benefit from knowing this information. Might I be a guest on your show so I can help deliver value to you and your audience? So do you see how this superpower now doesn't become competition, it becomes complementary? So you understanding what you have to offer, you can find people who could potentially use what you have and use your superpower to help their audience even more. And now, for example, this blogger or podcaster who might have had this amazing relationship built with you because you were on their show might go, Jim, you have a very violent dog. Great. I know the exact person that you should get involved with, because likely these people are more generalized, and you with that specialization can take that even further and sort of infiltrate and build these relationships as such. You can definitely become sort of somebody's go-to if that works out. A good example of this is Amy Porterfield. Any Amy Porterfield fans in the house here? Yeah, me too. And so Amy Porterfield, she talks about all things online business. But when she wants to talk about Facebook ads, she brings her buddy Rick Mulready on. And he comes on in segments like quite often to talk about the latest and greatest in Facebook ads, because Amy's moved on from Facebook ads, but she still wants to have somebody come on who is legit and expert in that space to provide value. And so now Rick is getting a lot of exposure from Amy's audience. They have a great relationship. People who know Amy also know Rick now. It's just a great and fantastic sort of deal where essentially everybody wins. So that's what I would focus on. I would focus on, well, what can I provide that's unique, or what skill can I learn so that I can become somebody's complimentary recommendation versus a competitor, and also just going out and trying to reach out to them in a way where I can provide value to them. The secondary story related to this is how Derek Halpern from socialtriggers.com got well known in the entrepreneurial how to build websites, how to build a business space. So Derek Halpern came into the blogosphere in about 2010, 2011. Definitely not the first one to do this. He teaches people how to build successful businesses. Definitely not the first to do that. I had been doing that for a couple of years, and I was not even the first to do that as well. I found my special niche in the passive income space. Derek's specialty was actually going into studies done in colleges and other places that were really dense studies, and taking these psychological studies. He has a psychological degree or a psych degree, and he would unpack these like 100-page long studies and filter through all that and give it back to us in layman's terms. And that was his superpower. And he actually reached out to me one day. I had no idea who he was. And he said, hey, Pat, I study psychology and I focus on psychological based conversions. And I noticed that on your about page, you have not done what you should be doing to collect the most emails. If you want to collect more emails, like I'll just tell you what I do for free. If not, no worries. I'm sorry I bothered you. So no ask. He was just asking to give. And of course, I'm going to accept that. So he then went, okay, Pat, sure, no worries. Here's what I would recommend you do on the about page. He gave me like 3 or 4 things to do. And literally the next day I saw a 250% increase in conversions on that page. I was like, Derek, you're a magician. Like, hey, let's talk. Let me invite you on the show. Let me do this. Let me do that. So he was able to provide value to me in that way. Much like how if somebody random in the audience came up to me and said, hey, Pat, I know a person who might be able to help you get, your switch pod into targets. Might you enjoy a recommendation? I can hook you up with that. I don't care who you are. You're like my best friend right now because that's legit on my mind. And so if you can help an influencer, a leader, a person in the blogosphere, podcaster, YouTuber in some way like that, well, then it doesn't really matter who you are. You are going to be somebody who stands out and can build a relationship with that person. And yes, Derek Halpern is hilarious for sure. Her superpower is similar to the dog whisperer. Yeah, kind of. But again, even though there are people who do what she does already, people don't have the connection to Caesar, I think is his name, Caesar, the dog whisperer, and she can become sort of a more accessible version of that for people. And her being a woman is also a differentiator as well in that space. So there's so many things, and I think that we're all able to become a differentiator just based on who we are and our personalities. Even if we're doing something similar to somebody else, we can stand out by just being more about who we are and focusing on the things that we know we're good at.